Greetings from the Econverse. The Econverse is a student-led initiative under the School of Economics, University of Hyderabad. We have several publications that cover economic trends, financial aspects of the economy, and other scholarly articles. Recently, we had a great opportunity to have a conversation with Dr. Abhishek Kumar when he was visiting our department to attend a conference on enabling sustained growth in emerging Asia. Dr. Abhishek Kumar is a lecturer at the University of Southampton. So, without any further ado, let's tune into the conversation.
Good evening, sir. I'm Pawan from MA Economics second year. Sir, my first question is, could you briefly share your background and how you developed an interest in economics leading to your current areas of focus?
So, thank you, Hyderabad University, for organizing this conference. And I'm attending this interesting conference on enabling sustained growth in emerging Asia. And my interest in economics primarily came because of my teaching, actually. After finishing my master's, I was teaching at University of Delhi. I never thought that I will basically study anymore. But teaching students at University of Delhi, I developed some interest in economic question, and especially related to knowing Indian economy much better, because my experience while teaching was that we do not know a lot about Indian economy, especially the macro side of that. And so I thought, okay, let's do a PhD and explore this a bit more. So it's primarily, I would say, a teaching-driven interest that I developed, and then I went to do PhD at IGIDEA. And as I told you, I was just trying to understand Indian economy better with whatever training I had. And still, I'm doing the same thing, trying to understand our own economy with the limited tools and training that I received at IGIDEA. So I think that makes sense to some extent to what I mean to say.
Right. And your areas of interest, because you've also done clear work in banking and sector.
Yeah. So I told you that my areas of interest are basically macro finance.
Right.
But I have done some work in some work related to banking sector in India as well, and that is basically trying to understand a big banking distress that we had in India in 2010. As most of you know that we had a NPA problem. But then we had a very little kind of empirical understanding of why this NPA problem came. There were a lot of anecdotal evidences that, okay, there were phone banking happening, there were corruption, there were kind of bad lending happening. You know? So there were all sorts of theories without enough substantiation.
Right.
And we thought, okay, with Dr. Rakesh Mohan, who is former deputy governor of Reserve Bank of India, basically I started thinking about this issue with him. And he was of the view that, okay, we should try to address this problem in more kind of, you can say, more systematic way rather than just say that this might have caused or that might have caused. And interestingly, when we started working on this problem, we unearthed a very good idea about non-performing assets and in general about our banking sector. We found that our banks are heavily dependent on commodity prices.
Right.
Because of commodity dependence of our economy. We are second largest steel producer in the world. So if the steel prices goes down, the banks who have given loan to a steel producer, they are in trouble, because those guys would be unable to pay back loans because the price of their product have gone down.
Right.
So our commodity dependence created a lot of problem for our banking sector. So that is what we found, and we have some related work ongoing in that direction. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. So the second question is on research. So researchers often pursue two paths. One is academically oriented work and then policy focused studies. So could you describe the type of research you conduct? Additionally, how might someone else decide which path to pursue? Was academic versus like policy research?
So I believe that all research have a kind of policy kind of aspect. You just need to be careful to kind of connect it to the relevant policy. Means if you will think through most of the research have policy implication.
Yeah.
By design, the economics is a science of understanding human behavior
Yes.
or behavior of the firm. So if we are doing that, then obviously it has some public policy implication.
Right.
So either theory or empirics, we are trying to understand the behavior of humans or behavior of firms. So if we have something, then obviously it has some policy implication. The only thing is that whether those policy implications are testable or not.
Right.
So that is an important concern, whether we can test or not. But I would say that this should not be a criteria for you to pursue research that whether this has policy implication or not, because all research have some policy implication. But yeah, you can think beyond that, okay, whether my policy implications can be tested or not with the data, whether I have the data or not, that could be a criteria. Because if your policy implication or outcome of your research cannot be tested with the data, then your research might be of less value because nobody can test it.
Correct. Thanks. So next question on the banking part. So many central banks have adopted Keynesian frameworks while others follow monetarist approaches. Which factors do you think influence a country's choice of a particular framework, like institutional factors?
You see, the monetarists have a very simple idea that, okay, just fix money growth actually, and that ties central bank's hand completely. The new Keynesian framework or the framework that we have in India
Right.
is basically not tying central bank hands in terms of instrument. We are saying, okay, you have to achieve 2% of inflation or 4% inflation, but do whatever you want to do. So monetarists are basically tying the central bank in terms of instrument itself. Money is the instrument for them. So they're saying, okay, your instrument is fixed. What you can do? Keynesians are saying, okay, your instrument is not fixed. Your objective is fixed. You need to have 4% inflation. Do whatever you want.
Right.
So as long as you think your central bankers are smart, credible, you can give them autonomy in instruments and give them an objective that you achieve this.
Right.
And that's what most of the governments are doing. They believe that their central bank is good, they're credible, they're smart people. So we don't need to worry about how they do it, just worry about what we want them to do. And that is what new Keynesian approach of inflation targeting is. But suppose you are kind of a country which doesn't have a developed central bank, your central bankers have not developed credibility, then in that scenario, it might make sense for you to adopt monetarist kind of framework, just tie them and don't allow them to play around. So it depends upon a country's developmental stage. And most of the countries with reasonable central bank are moving towards new Keynesian way of doing it, fixing objective, giving freedom with instruments.
Right. Thank you. So economics as a research domain has a lot of unquantifiable ideological aspects gets into it.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, if you see the Indian economy, we have papers coming from giants like Arvind Panigari, who was saying that India is growing at decent rate. But at the same time, we also have papers from universities like Azim Premji, which are not actually painting a rosy picture. That's not the case. So how can a layperson could approach this? How could they see? Because someone who certainly don't understand the nuances of research, when they have two kinds of views coming on the same aspect, so how will they see it? How should they see it?
So what is the question? Is your question that what is the right growth rate for India, or is something different?
No.
Or do you think that there are questions about growth rate, or
Yeah, it's largely that. The question is also about what the role of ideology within economics. So how is it affecting the views of the layperson?
or data? You mean to say
Data, yeah, of course.
the people with different ideologies are
The same data.
using the same data and trying to make a different point?
Different interpretations. Yes.
Okay, so if the question is about that, I certainly believe that is the case.
Yes.
But this should not be the case. But also you have to keep in mind that people should be kind of having freedom to interpret the numbers in the manner they want to be. Otherwise, we can't constrain that, okay, this is a number and everybody has to read this number like this. And people should have freedom to read the number in the best kind of available way. So there should be a freedom. But now the point is that, okay, do we see economists using numbers to make points which are contradicting? The answer is yes, and this is bad for the profession as long as we have kind of reasons to believe that these are motivated.
Right.
So as long as these are not motivated, I don't see any problem. I'm free to see a number differently than you. But if any of us are motivated to make the point, then I think there is a problem. So if the economists are motivated for whatever reasons
Right.
for making these kind of contradictory points, then I think that's not a good thing actually. Because that's my understanding. But I don't mean to say that okay, we should coerce people to have uniform views about a number.
Absolutely. Sure. Also, how do you see our Indian economy is doing right now?
The Indian economy is definitely slowing down. And we had apprehensions for this for some time. It's long, like kind of a few months ago, I wrote a piece also it appeared in Hindu Business Line, I believe. And it was about our failure of kickstarting the virtuous cycle. Because there's a lot of noise in the media that, okay, we have created the virtuous cycle, the economy is going to take off. But I said, no, there's no evidence to suggest that the virtuous cycle has started. And the central point of my argument was that, okay, at some point of time, government will give up. And this is what has happened in the budget. Right now, the government has given up. The government is saying, okay, we have tried everything that we could do, but we could not kickstart the virtuous cycle. Now, give it to the consumers, money in their pocket. That's what the tax cut is doing. And let's see if their spending can kickstart the virtuous cycle. Because they have tried their spending and that could not kickstart the virtuous cycle. So now the point depends on the differences in the multiplier of the government expenditure and private consumption. Right now, we are thinking that the private consumption has a higher multiplier and that will lead to more private investment and that can revive the economy. But one needs to examine this in more kind of detailed and careful manner, because ex ante it's not clear to me that why these multipliers would be very different. Government spending or giving money to her or him to spend, why this would be different. But obviously government has realized this, that there is a limit of them spending and multiplier of that. And that is why they are moving money to the pockets of people, assuming that their spending will have a different multiplier, a higher multiplier, and that might kickstart the virtuous cycle, that is a private investment. So that is the situation of our economy. If it happens that we are able to galvanize to some extent private investment by this process, then definitely we may see higher growth in coming years. But if we are unable to do that, then we may remain kind of stuck with low growth, like 6.5 for more than 1 year. So it all depends upon how this transformation is, or this basically kind of government action is changing behavior of the so-called tax beneficiary. Yes?
That's really right. So the next question is on the banking. So the banking system is evolving with digital banking and the rise of artificial intelligence. So what are your views on the future of banking in this context, in the context of AI and the digitalization?
Oh, so what we call these banks as high street banks in UK, like the banks, ICICI Bank,
Right.
HDFC Bank, the banks with big name and branches, we call them high street banks in UK. I don't know why we call them high street banks, but it seems like fancy high street banks. And most of them are closing branches like in UK. So last time I was reading news, a famous bank in UK has closed 155 branches. So there's a threat of fintech, there's a threat of AI, and the threat of I would say digital technology. Banks will have to change their ways to remain competitive in the business because these branches are expensive. You have to pay a lot of money for rent. You have to pay to your employees, those who are coming to the branches. But what if I can do everything online? This is very costly. So I hope you see the point.
Right.
So it's like cost effective for the banks to go off online and reduce their offline presence.
All right.
That's what they're doing, and that's what they will keep doing. But then there is a danger actually of that, which is less known. and which I teach to my students in class, is the fact that banks also have developed trust over time. Okay, and the trust has appeared and has been continued because of their presence on the streets, because we see them all the time.
Right.
But if they all go offline, then basically there won't be that trust differential actually.
Right.
So banks would be doing this calculation very clearly that, okay, if I'm ICICI Bank, should I close all my branches and go offline and become like a fintech company and reduce my cost, or I should retain branches because these branches have benefits in terms of higher trust.
Right.
And that would be very important for the banks in the traditional way going forward, because most of their business will sit online.
Right.
But the trust cannot come from only online presence. That's what they have realized. So there's a big question for them in terms of, okay, should we remain on the street? Because this has been very important for people having trust in us. If we go online, then people will treat us like as a neo-finance. There's a fintech imagined. So there's no difference between neo-finance and ICICI Bank, because both of them are doing business in the same manner. So ICICI Bank would be mindful of this at some point of time. And that is the next thing in the banking, that how much is this valuable actually remaining on the street.
Right.
Otherwise, banks will be kind of continue to do the functions that they are doing. Those functions are not going to change.
Yeah.
Only the way they are doing is likely to change. And I just mentioned to you what is the big thing in terms of going offline or online.
Yes.
AI is not going to disrupt their business in a bad way. AI is very good for them, because AI is just improving their ability to screen applicants.
Right. For automation.
Yeah, no, just screening ability means my models have a good amount of kind of screening capability and at a very cheap cost. The banks have, what is the most important cost for a bank? If you screen somebody badly, the guy was bad, and your model could not screen that the guy is bad, and you gave him a loan.
Right.
AI just make it very cheap that I have hundreds of models now actually, and thousands of variables. So I have more ability to decide whether this guy is a bad guy or not a bad guy. So the AI is going to improve banks' screening capacity enormously actually. So this is going to help them in a very kind of good way. But then there are other challenges that I told you in terms of cost reduction.
Yes.
And then they will have to make a decision about going offline and online. And that's the big thing about the banking. That is everything going to be online?
Thanks for that such nuanced understanding on that. Because usually we look at it in very singular way, like it's all either good or bad.
Yeah.
Thanks for that understanding. So that led me to my penultimate question. So what are some major research gaps in the bank or like in any economics area today? Could you suggest some topics for emerging budding researchers to explore?
I'm still kind of doing research which I won't plan to be doing at the frontier. So I think the answer for this question won't be, I think, that appropriate from my point of view. But I still can say, okay, what could be the good thing from the Indian economic perspective, what we should be trying to do. Means there are very less information about or reasonable information about the kind of employment elasticity of our growth. Means this is an old debate. Was started by guys at JNU in 1990s in liberalization, that we are growing without creating job. And the growth is having zero elasticity or no elasticity. So you see employment regressed on growth, and you have a number which is growth elasticity of employment. How much employment changes if growth changes by 1%?
Right.
No, we believe that this number is very low. We believe based on studies which happened in past, but we do not have a very good idea about this. I believe there are some data available now from this periodic labor force survey, which is now available for many years, at least 7-8 years, quarterly frequency and disaggregated data. So I think that is one good area to see that, okay, How much is the employment elasticity of growth? Is it sectoral variation? Are the cases that there are some sectors where the employment elasticity of growth is higher? Means that is very important for policy point of view, because I believe, and everybody like you should believe, I think that India is at a kind of a juncture of the moment in history. Okay, so every country at one point of time will have a stagnated population and declining population.
Right.
India will also come to that stage.
Yes, absolutely.
Right now, we are at the peak of our productive population, actually.
Demographic dividend.
Demographic dividend, you call it. I do not know whether it's a dividend or not. So I'm just saying that we have maximum productive people.
Yes.
But if we cannot utilize them properly, then we will lose this opportunity, because those people who could have been productive
Yes, sir.
will just go from this earth without making their contribution, because they could not get a chance to contribute.
Right.
No? And if they all get a chance to contribute, then obviously India will do great. So what we have to basically think that, okay, what should we do that everybody who is productive gets a chance to contribute? And in that aspect, what I told you, that is very important to know for us, that where we can do something which can lead to more employment, because we just want to give these people reasonable employment. So utilizing whatever data we have from different sources, because there are a lot of data now available. What I told you from private labor force, periodic labor force survey, that's government. Then other is a consumer pyramid survey that comes from CMI Proves. Again, there is information on employment. So if we can use this data to find something about employment elasticity of growth, sectoral variation, and other variation, and think about policy, that might be useful.
Thanks.
So labor-related policies going forward and thinking about labor issues and creating employment is, I think, the most important issue for our generation. There's no other issue.
Right.
Because if we do not do this, then we do not get the dividend, actually. And if we do not get the dividend, then we basically do not become developable. So this dividend is our road to develop.
Yes.
And we should do everything that is possible to get this dividend. So anything related to labor is important area to pursue at this point, and which is not well researched at all in India.
Right. Thank you, sir. So, final question. So, could you please suggest any of your favorite similar papers, books, movies, etc. for the students that they should be engaging during the master stage, PhD days?
I believe you should watch a lot of movies. And there are a lot of good movies also related to kind of courses. I don't know how many of you have done it, but my first class at University of Southampton started with a movie called Bank of Days. So it's a movie on Netflix. It's about a kind of revolution against loan sharks. The guys are kind of making loans at a higher rate. Then there is one guy who comes and say, okay, I will establish a bank and I will give you loan at a lower rate. So there are a lot of interesting things that you can learn from Netflix. Means you should be wise enough, you should watch. In terms of book, I believe that everybody should read, but should read according to their own choices. I don't have any favorite.
You don't have.
That's my favorite.
That's what we only want your favorite, sir.
Yeah, so my favorite would be, I would say one book would be Fooled by Randomness. If you have heard about it, it's a book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I learned a lot from that book in my early student days. That book came maybe at least 15 years ago.
What's the book name, sir?
Fooled by Randomness.
Fooled by Randomness.
Okay, Nassim Nicholas Taleb is a very famous, celebrated author. So, but that's one of my very favorite books because I learned a lot about real life issues reading through that book, actually. There are many, but you should read books. There are no better substitutes, actually, of reading, actually.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.